US is awful. To play, to pick up your kids, you just can't depend on it.
Oh, brace yourself, folks, because today we're diving headfirst into the captivating world of why is public transportation so bad in the States. Oh wait, what's that? You thought America was the land of convenience and efficient commuting? Seriously, who requires reliable buses and trains when you can just teleport, right? So fasten your seatbelts and get ready for a sarcastic joyride through the mess that is American public transportation. All aboard the Snark Express, choo-choo! Without enough public transportation choices, commuters in the US are forced to rely on their cars, which worsens the quality of the air, causes traffic, and produces more greenhouse gases in the atmosphere. Why then don't we have more efficient public transportation? Several years of car-centric planning and legislation, along with bad design and cost-cutting, as well as a negative public opinion, are to blame. The current state, the US public transportation system just cannot keep up with those of the other nations or the needs of the average American. 75% of the US commuters drive alone or in a carpool. Americans, particularly the working poor, spend more time commuting and more money on automobiles and insurance as rents rise and cities continue to grow. Texas A&M discovered in a 2021 study that the cost of congestion in our 15 largest cities is close to $7 billion. In the meantime, the US has spent close to $10 trillion in taxpayer money on roads and highways over the previous 65 years. Only 25% of that was used for transportation or public transportation. The benefits: both our community and the environment benefit from public transportation, particularly when we utilize electric solutions. It lowers the consumption of fossil fuels and lowers greenhouse gas emissions. Also, it can lessen traffic, noise, and air pollution. People of various ages and socioeconomic levels can more easily access jobs, education, and cultural opportunities thanks to public transportation, which is frequently referred to as an equalizer. According to studies, having access to public transit also helps kids' social and emotional development, lightens the load on parents, and lessens loneliness amongst the elderly. And finally, by generating jobs, public transit can have a significant positive economic impact. A failure of policy and planning. Rich urbanites flock to multi-family, mixed-use buildings in cities like Denver, Des Moines, Los Angeles, and Boston between 1890 and 1930, which led to the growth of streetcar suburbs. A streetcar stop that would carry residents into the closest metropolitan core was within a 5 to 10 minute walk of the majority of these dwellings in these districts. Others argue that the terrain of the United States renders public transportation unworkable, but in reality, individuals are forced to drive due to the way our built environment has been designed. After World War II, the suburbs we know today were created thanks to vehicle culture and a greater emphasis on single-family dwellings. For instance, suburban highways, curving layouts were designed to reduce traffic. Our urban regions are still expanding. Unchecked growth into uninhabited space comes at the price of expenditures on current facilities and infrastructure. As a result, people must travel even further distances, which makes it more challenging to establish links for public transportation. For instance, the population of the Chicago area expanded by only 4% between 1970 and 1990, but the region's built-up land climbed by 46%, according to Brookings. Many locals are consequently put in a precarious situation. Without a car, it's impossible to get to work, and without work, it's impossible to pay for a car. This is due to the rise in suburban poverty across the country. The cost of car ownership, meanwhile, is a significant hardship on the working poor. Cost-cutting and poor design. Some people use low ridership as an excuse to avoid making investments in public transportation. Yet, people won't use transportation if it doesn't make sense. One typical journey, which would take 20 minutes by vehicle and 60 minutes by public transportation, is highlighted by the Brookings report in Chicago. According to Bloomberg, this subpar design is frequently accompanied by unpredictable service brought on by a lack of upkeep. When the transportation service that cities provide is not attractive, the demand from passengers that may justify its upgrade will never arise. In many cases, transit providers continue to lose customers and money by reducing essential services in an effort to save money. Politics and public perception. Public perception is viewed as a necessary utility in many parts of the world, but it is typically treated as social assistance in the US. This is further supported by the observation that those who have no other option frequently take public transportation that is in poor condition. These systems promote division since the general public doesn't find them useful. Budgets for public transportation are generally decided by local governments and states rather than the federal government, and spending per capita varies greatly between states. The Urban Institute claims that present funding for transit operations is slanted towards the wealthier, more liberal communities. Several low-income communities are thus left without access to reliable and affordable transportation. So what can we do? We need to make public transportation more convenient, affordable, and comfortable in order to increase ridership. Experts advise using buses that are electric. Compared to more complicated infrastructure projects like subways, they are less expensive and simpler to buy and install. Designing with consideration and following best practices is essential. They include knowing commuter preferences, combining bus routes with affordable housing, and lowering the amount of delivery vehicles on the road. The usage of cars should be discouraged as well. According to Brookings, enacting congestion and VMT tolls, raising parking costs, and reinvesting these proceeds in human-scale transit infrastructure. Politically, the Urban Institute urges the federal government to play a bigger part in managing public transportation to assure its availability as a public utility. Depoliticizing the topic and gaining public support can be accomplished in large part by forming local coalitions and highlighting the advantages of public transportation for communities. Another question is, why did America give up on mass transits back in the era? The maps show the sizable urban areas that are not served by full-service bus services. If they don't live downtown, it's very probable that the bus won't take them there, even if they do live close to one. A bus that runs every hour, stops at 7 o'clock, and isn't scheduled on Sundays confines people's lives so severely that anyone who can drive will choose to do so. This maintains a low ridership per capita. What took place? The most obvious reason for this over the past 100 years is that American transit companies have consistently reduced basic local service in a futile attempt to increase their profits, but all they managed to do was turn away customers and money. When cities' transit systems are unattractive, passenger demand that may justify their improvement never materializes. The United States had a significant expansion of its transit infrastructure during the decades around the turn of the century. Much of this work was done by private businesses with limited municipal assistance. The subway systems of Boston, Chicago, New York City, Philadelphia, and Chicago's L were all built during this time. From cities all around the country, vast networks of interurbans, a type of streetcar that went far into rural areas, were distributed. Streetcar suburbs expanded along major thoroughfares, enabling middle-class individuals to purchase homes while still having simple access to work in the city. The company National City Lines, which is owned by General Motors, Firestone, and other members of the auto industry, is frequently held responsible for the decline of streetcars and interurbans in popular histories of post-war urban development. National City Lines purchased numerous local streetcar companies in order to replace their operations with rubber-tired, GM-made buses. Yet whether or not NCL acquired the local firm, the deterioration in transit service, which occurred everywhere, was the primary problem. The issue is that while there was sufficient government financing for the construction of these lines, at least up until the present administration stopped even allotted transit monies from flowing, there are no such funds available for operations. In other words, trains on these pricey showpiece routes might only operate once every half hour or so. At its most extreme, only 2 days a week, trains ran on Cleveland's $70 million waterfront line for a number of yards. Nonetheless, light rail has been a successful stimulus for denser development and a resurgence of the transit system in numerous cities. Formerly thought to be an oxymoron, Los Angeles' expanding network of light rail lines has managed to draw significant ridership and has contributed to a downtown renaissance. Even a large city like Dallas has been able to create a sizable and largely utilized LRT network. Seattle now boasts a successful light rail path that makes up for the 1970s rail transportation failure, especially when it built its new extension to the University of Washington. And there you have it, folks. We've reached the end of our mind-bending exploration into the labyrinth of why is public transportation so bad in the US? I hope you enjoyed this sarcastic and eye-opening journey as much as I did. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you never miss our next snark-infused adventure into the quirks of the world around us. Until next time, keep pushing for change, and always remember, even in the face of bad public transportation, the journey is what we make of it. Thanks for joining me.